Hey there, folks. Happy Friday to you. Hope you had a fantastic week trading. What an interesting week it was. Um, Coming at you with this week's market wrap and sector watch video for next week. Let's just go ahead and break right into it. Last week, when I did the market wrap sector watch video, I mentioned that we had a nice Fed driven rally and bulls had retaken control, and it was up to them to continue to show that this week. And it was looking a bit sketchy uh, for, for a little bit there. Um, we had an immense amount of data this week. We had a presidential, the presidential debate, first debate, and we had OPEC, and then we had this Deutsche Bank thing. We had all kinds of stuff. We had a bunch of Fed members jawboning about how raising rates and all this other stuff, and there was just an incredible amount of data that was out and absorbed this week, and it was looking pretty sketchy for the bulls. But and, especially yesterday, right? Yesterday we got the systemic potential systemic risk of Deutsche Bank, basically going belly up or whatever, and that really rattled the markets. But today, they come roaring back when apparently they're in negotiations that instead of having to pay a $14 billion fine to the DOJ, they may only have to pay $5.4 billion. What's $10 billion between friends? I mean, come on. So we got a nice little rally. I mean, but we'll see. There was nothing confirmed about this report, or let's, we'll have to see what the final number is. I mean, listen, if it comes out over the weekend that they're looking at $11 billion, I think that could be, problematic. But this $5.4 billion number, everybody seemed to kind of like it. So we'll see what happens next week. But we had some other things happening that were positive for the market. So the Nasdaq, nice little pop today. Had a nice IPO today. This NTNX opened up, and I mean, look, literally never looked back. Beautiful uptrend all day long, and actually holding up very nicely after market, which I thought maybe we get some pullback on that. I would love to see this thing pull back into the 30s, low 30s, 32, even maybe $30 next week on low volume. I think this could be like another one, another Twilio type stock, right? Really beautiful open, nice strength. We'll see what the general consensus is from the analysts coming next week. I'm sure that will start to come out, but pretty impressive day. And we've had several IPOs that have been pretty nice lately, so that's a positive for the markets. The other thing that we had going on, so Nasdaq looks pretty good. I mean, it looks it's consolidating. It pierced the upper Bollinger Band and now consolidating, right? And pierce the upper Bollinger Band here, consolidating a bit. Could be building up some energy for its next move higher. Let's take a look at the SMH, which I've been talking to my pro members over at Alpha Wolf Trading all week long about SMH. Definitely the strongest sector out there, in my opinion, right? Making all-time highs, made another one today, getting ready to test $70 holla, potentially take that out. And listen, I don't know what takes SMH down, right? There's been a lot of merger activity, merger and acquisition activity in the space. Some great earnings in the space. What set us off this week was Qualcomm looking to take out NXPI. And typically you don't see the acquiring company break out the way Qualcomm did, but apparently the street really liked the thought of these two companies combining. We're talking a big deal here, right? Big money deal in this NXPI. So, popped up to 105. They're saying this could take 2-3 months for this to actually happen. So, not unusual to see stock pulling back a little bit. See Qualcomm pull back after its big run, but still very impressive. There are a lot of names, a lot of good-looking charts still within the semiconductor space. So we'll see what happens next week. We'll see if we get some follow-through on this move. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we consolidated a little bit, pulled back a little bit, but really, really strong sector, SMH. And that's not to say that it can't pull back. I mean, it certainly could. Anything could happen. We could have some, horrible event happen over the weekend. You could have the Fed come out and raise the rate 3 times between now and Monday. I mean, the likelihood of that happening is not very good. But, we had an immense amount of Fed members that were jawboning this week about raising rates. I mean, they talk a really good game about raising rates. They just, when the event comes, they just don't do anything. But they talk really good about it. So could that derail the markets if they raise the rate, 2 or 3 times before the end of the year? Sure, that could derail the market. Do I think the likelihood of that happening is very high? No, I really don't. I mean, but, look, they could shock us. We'll never, who knows? We'll see. So SMH, strong sector and looking like it wants to continue to be strong. Let's take a look at another sector that did have some strength last week. Wanted to see if it could carry over into this week, but we're kind of anticipating that we would see some weakness because we had finally gotten up and tested the $300 holla, and that wound up acting as resistance, price resistance. We pulled back, was hoping to see it hold at about 292, 293, right in that area. Wound up breaking down below there. Came down, test the 50 EMA, broke below there. And now just above the 100 EMA. Looking to see if the 100 EMA can act as support. It did wind up pulling back to there. It barely almost tagged it and then bounced today, closed nearly at the high of the day. But we are in a short-term trend line, short-term downtrend in the IBB. We'll see if we can get some continuation of this move. Go back up, maybe test that trend line up there, get back above 292 and hold in that area. That would be good to see. Nice volume day in the IBB today as well, right? Good relative volume in the IBB. But listen, it's got a lot of work to do. For right now, to me, IBB is guilty until proven innocent. Moving forward, okay? IWM, nice little bounce today, consolidating. I mean, we had this pullback. We broke below the 50 EMA, we bounced back up, tested that high, coming back down. Just consolidating. Managed to hold above the 21 EMA. And we need to hold 122, basically, hold that 50 EMA. If we break below there, I think we do go down and maybe test 119, test that 100 EMA, potentially test this trend line here. Okay, but for now, still looking fairly decent. I mean, it's consolidating. So we'll see what happens next week. The other thing that we were really focused on this week with pro members over at Alpha Wolf Trading was, and still is, gold. We were focusing on it holding this longer term trend line here. And it has, each time it's come down, it's managed to bounce off there. Today we closed below it on rising volume, and that is somewhat troubling, I would think, for the gold bugs and the gold bulls, right? We closed below there. Now, if you take a look at Nugget, we actually broke below the longer term trend line a while back. Okay, and we've come back up and tried to pop back in, and it acted as resistance. Come back up, tried to pop back in, acted as resistance. So looking fairly weak for, you know, gold and the miners, right? Let's take a look at JNUG. Now JNUG has not broken this trend line yet. I mean, it is really close. It pierced right here, but managed to close above it. But not looking really positive or healthy for gold and the miners. Let's just take a look at GDX and GDXJ. Some people like to play those. I mean, still in short-term downtrend, right? And if gold continues to weaken, that's going to be problematic for GDX and GDXJ. Let's take a look and see what silver did today, just for fun. There it is. So silver actually managed to close green a little bit today, huh? Had a big old bounce and then pulled back, closed nearly at the low of the day. So kind of interesting move there. All right, S&P 500. Let's take a look at the S&P 500. So yesterday it was looking, looking like, maybe the market's getting ready to roll over. But listen, I'm not going to get real concerned about the S&P 500 unless we break below 212. 212 is the spot for me. If we break below 212 with conviction, then I think maybe the bears have something to hold on to. These little pullbacks. I mean, look, if you've been trying to get short this market, it's been a tough game, man. You have gotten your face ripped off just about every single time, right? It's just very difficult to short this market. The bears try to jump in, and then we get like what we had today. We get this rip your face off rally, and it's just a tough proposition. Now, listen, I'm not saying that we're gonna rip roar higher and go to new all-time crazy highs. I mean, that could happen because there are so many people that are counting on the market rolling over. But I mean, we could just continue to do what we have done, which is consolidate and base and chop around and no conviction on either side. I mean, I know it's difficult for value players to buy up here. A lot of people think the markets are overvalued, but it's just as difficult for the bears that are shorting because they're getting their faces ripped off. So, maybe we just chop around a bit more. We'll see. But S&P 500, likely going to experience some resistance right around 2188 or so. That's still 20 points away, but 2188. I think you're going to run into some potential price resistance, and then maybe we pull back a little bit. We'll see. All right, let's take a look at. I want to take a look at this real quick. IYT. Which is the transportation index. Some strength this week, right? Pretty nice little pop today on the transportation index, which is kind of interesting because we had that huge move in oil this week. So I would have thought that maybe transportation would have gotten a bit of a pullback off of a strong oil rally, but it didn't. It actually held up pretty well. Nice little pop. 146 is a big area. Potentially a big area of price resistance for IYT. If it takes that out with conviction, we can get a nice little pop in the transportation names. But, coming up into the holiday season, big shipping season, right? FedEx, UPS, shopping season, the whole deal. So kind of makes sense that we're getting a little bit of a pop in IYT. Let's take a look at, so we already talked about IBB. You know, listen, this Labu pulled right back to an area of potential price support. Could see it. It did actually bounce off of there today. If the IBB manages to continue its move higher, Labu could present an opportunity for a short-term trade. And if it goes, you know, if IBB continues to roll over, LABD is something to keep an eye on. It had a nice pop, 2-day pop when the IBB was showing some weakness. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about oil. Let's talk about the move this week. It was huge. I mean, it caught a lot of people off guard. I'm telling you, because the oil space was not looking good. It was looking pretty darn weak. And then, you know, no one anticipated any kind of announcement out of OPEC. And then we got that announcement, and you got this huge bounce in oil. Now, listen, there's a lot of skepticism about that deal that was made, number one. You know, let's just take a look at something here. Let me go to USO. All right, USO, let's go there. Coming up into potential price resistance at 11 bucks. I would also suggest that this pop, the volume is declining, right? So there's not nearly as much conviction. It's not like we have rising volume on this pop. We have declining volume. So keep that in mind. We also had, you know, Congress, House and Senate veto Obama and allow the Saudi Arabia legislation for 9/11 victims to sue Saudi Arabia. Look, whether right or wrong, I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough to say whether that's right or wrong. How that all plays out, though, with Saudi Arabia is going to be interesting, I think, over the next coming weeks and months. So we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out. But this oil bounce was impressive, caught a lot of people off guard. But, you know, I do not know how. I mean, we're coming up into price resistance in the XLE. We're coming up into price resistance in the XOP, right? Coming up into price resistance and declining volume. So I just don't know how much conviction there is there. I would be careful. Let's see if we get some real follow through next week. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a little pullback in the oil and energy space next week. Retail had a nice little pop today. Yesterday it was looking pretty dismal for retail. It broke below $43, which I thought was, you know, going to act as potential price support. Broke below there, closed below it today, but we did manage to get a little bounce, testing the short-term trend line. See if we get any follow through. I mean, we are coming up into the shopping season. You know, I suppose anything is possible. And there was somebody that came out and upgraded. I don't know who the firm was, but they came out and upgraded like a lot of retailers. So I think that had something to do with today's bounce. Metals and mining, interesting, kind of consolidating a little bit right here at the trend line. See what happens next week. Consumer discretionary, also kind of interesting, coming up into this area of potential price resistance, which acted as support. Looking to see if maybe it can break back up into this channel and then hold above there, and, you know, bounce around between 82 and 80 bucks. You know, XLY came down and, you know, it's really been testing this shorter term trend line here, managed to hold it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if we break back above that 80.25 mark and get back inside that channel next week. Healthcare. So, you know, here's one that actually broke down below, finally broke this trend line on, what was that, Thursday. and was not looking good. And we closed nearly at the low of the day, and then we got that bounce today. We reclaimed it, but still looking pretty weak for the healthcare sector, and got to be cautious, I think. But it was nice to see that it closed back above that trend line at the end of the day. So XLU utilities, this is kind of interesting. You would have thought that on the Deutsche Bank day we would have got a good pop in utilities, and we didn't. So let's look at utilities. Another example of one that broke the longer term trend line. Was in a short downward trend. Look, we took that out. Looked as though we were going to come back up and test this trend line. We've now rolled over. It looks as though we're going to come back and test maybe this 200-day moving average, see if that acts as support. But utilities really not, looking pretty weak, right? Coming down. We'll see if $48 acts as support in the 200-day moving average. Could be a bounce area for it. We'll see. Industrials, nice. Well, I shouldn't say nice, but coming up towards potential price resistance around $59. This one, you got to keep an eye on the dollar, right? The dollar, and that's something else we need to talk about real quick. If the dollar weakens, that will be good for industrials. It'll be good for aerospace defense and, some of the big multinational companies. The dollar strengthens, that could be problematic for industrial. So we'll see what happens. Dollar didn't do a whole lot this week. It's kind of like just coiling up here, right? It's getting ready for a move one way or another. We'll see if it breaks down or if it breaks out next week, but really not a whole lot of action there with the dollar. But I do think that is something that you need to pay pretty close attention to. Volatility, had a nice volatility pop yesterday. However, still in a downtrend, still, about to take out new lows, looks like. If the markets continue to hold up, you're going to see no volatility, or continue to see UVXY and TDIX just continue to decay, right, over time. So unless there's some fear in the marketplace, don't look for there to be a big spike in volatility. UWTI, I was just wanted to look at that real quick. Did break over that trend line, but like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if we saw a little bit of a pullback in oil next week. Not saying a full-blown collapse, but and then let's talk about financials real quick. Actually, I'll do that with FAS and FAS. Hold on a second. Let's take a look at home builders. Right? Been talking to the pro members all week at Alpha Wolf Trading about the home builders. And look, you've got a couple of things going on. You've got potentially the Fed raising the rate. And this really isn't a great time of the year for home builders, I wouldn't think, right? You're coming up into the holiday season, coming up into winter weather, and probably going to be, create some challenges, I would think, in the short term, near term, for home builders. They are hovering above the 200-day moving average. They are bumping up into that short-term trend line. I just don't think this is one of my favorite sectors to be paying attention to. I pay attention to all the sectors, but this is not one that I would be looking to find bargains in right now. I think you're going to probably be able to find things cheaper. That's just my thinking, but we'll see how it all plays out. Aerospace and defense. So aerospace and defense is another one that had broken down below this longer term trend line, tested the 100 EMA, bounced up, came back up, testing this trend line, and has not been able to get back over it. And one of my favorite names in the space, Lockheed Martin, not looking real good. Looking like it wants to come down and potentially test this 200-day moving average right around $233. See if that acts as price support for it. but not a great look on Lockheed Martin. Um, so, aerospace and defense, I think, is still, it looks okay, but it is in kind of guilty until proven innocent. All right, so we talked about volatility. We talked about, all right, let's talk about financials real quick. So I found this a little bit interesting. FAS and FAS are the 3-time bull and 3-time bear ETFs. And, you know, FAS broke down pretty hard yesterday, but really did not get that big of a bounce off of the action in off the Deutsche Bank news today. Could be interesting. Look, if Deutsche Bank, if there's confirmation that the DOJ is going to settle for $5.4 billion or whatever, that could be a real catalyst for financials and the banks. FAS could be a good way to play it if you don't want to expose yourself to an individual bank name. And then, of course, the other way to look at it is if they come out and say Deutsche Bank is going to have to pay DOJ $12 billion, then maybe you look to play FAZ, F-A-Z. Look, these are just day trading vehicles. These are not meant to be things that you hold overnight, right? 3-time leveraged ETFs, they have a natural decay to them, so just be careful in that space. Man, let's see. I don't think that I have anything else that is really standing out at me. Shippers. Now, there's nothing that's really standing out at me here. So, listen, if you like what I do here, come check us out over at alphawolftrading.com. If you're interested in becoming a pro member, but you have some questions, feel free to email me at tim@alphawolftrading.com. And I will be back Sunday morning for this week's free stocks to watch for next week. And on Ticker TV, Sunday, 8 a.m. And what else? What else? I think that's pretty much it. If you want to check out Ticker TV, 8 o'clock, Sunday morning, some of you, I will see you there. And the rest, I will see next week. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe. Have fun. Good luck trading next week if I don't see you on Sunday morning. And that's it. Take care.